So welcome to this third Research Lightning session. This afternoon we are going to listen to two different projects, but very interesting research projects. So there will not be three here, there's only two. But then we have some time for questions or maybe a little reflection together. So the first session we will hear Jana Martin on now I cannot read, environmental scan of rehabilitation service for adults with deafblindness. So Jana Martin is trained to be a teacher for students with visual and hearing impairments. And after her studies, she started to work in the field of vocational rehabilitation service and is now a project manager of Wege in der Beruf, Path to Employment in Germany. And it's a project that aims to develop implemented specialized vocational training, maybe I should rehearse a little more, and rehabilitation service for individuals living with deafblindness in Germany. Alongside the project, she is doing her doctorate at the Heidelberg University of Education under supervision of Professor Dr. Andrea Wanka, also from the Heidelberg University of Education in Germany, and Professor Dr. Walter Wittich, who's also sitting here from the University of Montreal in Canada. And her research explores the current practice of rehabilitation service for individuals living with deafblindness in an international perspective. So that will be very interesting. So the word is yours, Jana.
Hello everyone, thank you for the introduction. I didn't remember what I wrote in my bio, so half of my first text I can now skip, but I will give you a description of my appearance. I'm a 30-year-old white woman with brown hair in chin length, and today I'm wearing black pants and an orange shirt. So as Hilla said, I'm a PhD student at the Heidelberg University of Education in Germany, and today I'm presenting not the project about vocational rehabilitation services. If you want to see that, that's in a poster presentation tomorrow and on Thursday. But I'm presenting my research project for my PhD studies, and the title is An Environmental Scan of Rehabilitation Services for Adults with Deafblindness. I need that. So first, about the background of my research project. We in this room, guess we all agree that disability is a distinct, deafblindness is a distinct disability, and that means that it requires specialized rehabilitation services. And there are so many places in the world that have many years of expertise in offering these specialized rehabilitation services. Nevertheless, there is a lack of research and literature about this specialized practice. It seems as if the knowledge about it is quite informal and a local knowledge. It is shared with colleagues, or mostly with new colleagues in the field if they are on your side, but there's not so much written down about what is consisting in this practice. At the beginning of my PhD studies, I met a leader of an organization that offers rehabilitation services to individuals with deafblindness, and he said to me, for so many years we have offered our rehabilitation services, and I think we are very good in the things we do, but nobody has ever written down what we do exactly. So I took that as a starting point, and this leads me to my objectives and my research question. My aim is to write down what is done, to analyze what this specialization is that rehab services are offering to meet the needs of individuals living with deafblindness, and like a really starting point question which is a citation by Geertz, what the hell is going on here? that's like the starting point research question for field studies. My research question in quite more complicated words, it's what practices, processes, logics, and routines are used to perform specialized rehabilitation services for deafblind adults. So I will present my methods now. My study is an exploratory study within the framework of an ethnographic study, so really a field study where I will go into the field, emerge in it by observing interventions, talking to persons involved in the field. This could be rehabilitation professionals as well as rehabilitation clients. So the collection of my data consists of observational notes, ethnographic interview notes, and, if possible, document collection. To give you an idea of the process, I have a chart of my research process and timeline. My first field stay was last year in 2022. I went to Norway to a center which offers rehabilitation services to adults living with deafblindness. I was there in February and in March and April to observe interventions. When I came home, I started coding this first data. Then in the end of 2022, beginning in October until April 2022, I went to a rehabilitation center in Germany to observe interventions there. And then again, in between the field stays, I coded data. And this July, just now before this conference, I was in a rehabilitation center in Canada to observe again rehabilitation interventions, take my notes, talk to persons involved in the field. And when I come back home, I will continue my coding, and this is a constant process of comparison between all these data pieces I have gathered together. And my aim is to complete my thesis at the end of 2024, beginning 2025, and of course publish the results then. But today I will share some insights or first thoughts I had while coding about the material I had collected so far. The first point is a definition of rehabilitation, and I really brought a definition given by persons in the field. It's a quotation by a rehabilitation professional, and this is now one quotation, but similar definitions were expressed by other persons in the field too. She says, rehabilitation, it's about learning new things and learning all things in a different way. And she also continues and says, it is a teamwork. I, as a rehabilitation professional, am your tool to learn new things or new ways of doing things. And now I continue with some emerging concepts. First, the concept of object of joint attention, which I found in quite some observational notes I took. There often is, in the interaction between the rehabilitation professional and the rehabilitation client, like in between them there's an object. This could be a hearing aid, a right cane, some assistive device. And this object is the focus of joint attention. And it is passed back and forth between the rehabilitation professional and the rehabilitation user, really as a pattern all along during the intervention. And there are the two sides, like the rehabilitation professional, when having the object, would maybe offer different choices, different options of this object. For example, if it is for filter glasses, we will offer different options of filter glasses to the client, or, for example, with a hearing aid, would offer different adjustments to it. And with a technical device, maybe the rehabilitation professional would propose or explain strategies to use the object. And on the other side, on the side of the rehabilitation user, well, this person will try out these options or adjustments or strategies. Really, what I observed a lot of times, will take the time to try it out and then give feedback about her or his experience, reflecting about how it was for this person to use this object or to use these strategies. And really these both sides, the back and forth of the object between the two persons can be observed as a pattern throughout many rehabilitation interventions I was observing. I have another emerging concept, the concept of to gain understanding. And also, this is not something just for one of the two persons, or maybe there are even more persons involved in the intervention. It's that both, or maybe all sides involved in the rehabilitation process, they aim to gain understanding concerning different aspects. So for the side of the rehabilitation professional, he or she would really try to gain understanding about the needs and the goals of the individual rehabilitation user, and will listen carefully to the feedback the user is providing concerning the adjustments or the options. Whereas on the other side, the rehabilitation user, throughout the rehabilitation process, aims to gain understanding about the own vision and the own hearing, about the different option he or she has on using assistive technology, aids, or strategies. And to gain understanding could also mean to learn new strategies, to learn new routines, maybe. And there are some more emergent concepts that are waiting for me to analyze more in depth. So when speaking of this object of joint attention, then there also comes the concept of joint action on an object, which could be also through something with guided touch. There is the use of haptics that could be observed in many interventions. I think throughout all interventions I have observed, there was this theme or concept of accessible setting. Then I have found this idea of goals that are always set by the rehabilitation user. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to further code and analyze my data, because really I'm in the middle of the process. I'm far away from finishing my analysis. And yeah, I thank you very much for your time and attention. And I'm waiting for your questions, I think, later. Or will we do it right now? I don't know how it is planned.
I think Jana will take the questions for you now,
Okay,
while
great.
your presentation is present in our mind. So we have time for 2 questions, maybe, or reflections. Yeah.
Oh, there's
no mic here.
Earlier there was.
Hello, hello, hello. This is working? Who was it?
Hi, thank you for a really interesting presentation. I was interested in the both sides learning about the process, the rehab worker or professional and the user. Were there situations in which the user wanted to act contrary to what the rehab professional was suggesting they do, or wanted to function in a different way to professional advice?
Sorry, I think I just didn't hear clearly.
Were there situations in which the deafblind person was perhaps being advised by a rehab professional, but they wanted to do the work in a different way or contrary to their advice?
Yeah. There was not so many situations of that, but I think it's because really most of the times, or at least when I observed the interventions, the rehabilitation professionals were really paying attention on not proposing too much, but waiting for the needs and the goals given by the user themselves. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, you were talking about interventions and you observed interventions in different countries. Mm-hmm. So could you be more specific about what type of interventions, and were the interventions similar in this in the several countries, or were there different interventions in different countries?
Yeah, thank you for your questions. You're right, I used the word interventions, but actually in the different countries, that's not how all of them call it. Some call it courses, some call it interventions. It really depends. So there might be like a part of my dissertation where we'll talk about wording of things, but I will now continue with interventions, and the content of it was, right, there were some differences, but there were quite a lot similarities in the content, like orientation and mobility was content I did observe often, or I did often observe orientation and mobility classes, courses, intervention, how you want to call it, or the content or courses about activities of daily living, how to use technical devices. Like this was quite similar in all of the places. So I really focused on those kind of things when I talk about interventions, because the places I went to are quite different in how the system is organized. And that's why I will really focus on the interaction between just rehabilitation professional and the client. So in this like micro situation, not the system as it is incomplete. Yeah.
Was that also the reason why you decided to observe in different countries?
One reason was because in some of the countries there's just one place that exists, that offers rehabilitation services. So with focusing on just one country, I would have no possibility to do a comparison between maybe different sites. That's why I decided to go to different places, and that meant to go to different countries. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jana, for sharing. We have a small gift for you. Thank you. Give Jana a big hand. So for the next pairs we have here is the next session title is Consensus on How to Define the Functional Definition of Deafblindness in the Netherlands, a Delphi study. And it's conducted by Eileen Haber and Charlotte van der Molengraft. And Dr. Eileen Haber has gained extensive experiences studying people with sensory impairments. She is a senior researcher at the Royal Cantalis Academy and the Weijer University in Amsterdam, and program leader of deafblind research studies in the Dutch experience program Deelkracht, something like that. Shared forces, it says. So Eileen supervises multiple research projects focusing on people with deafblindness. And in all of these projects, she's working closely together with people with lived experience with deafblindness and care professionals. She is the project leader of a project in which the Dutch functional definition of deafblindness is developed, and a project in which a psychosocial support program for family with Usher syndrome is studied. She also leads multiple research project focusing on laboring participation for people with hearing or visual impairments. And her work has resulted in many national and international publications, presentations, and collaborations. And one of the collaborations is with you, Sonja van der Molengraft. And she is 74 years old and lives in the Netherlands with her husband of 50 years. And they have 4 children, 2 grandchildren, 2 dogs. One of them is a guide dog and a black cat. And Charlotte has Usher syndrome and is functionally blind and deaf, but has 2 cochlear implantations so that she can hear a lot more than she ever was able to. So that is very nice for you, Charlotte. She likes walking with the dogs, reading spoken books, cycling on a tandem, make 3D paintings and sculptures, and since 1995, she has been a volunteer in the deafblind world. So Charlotte started as a secretary of the organization of the blind, and the last 10 years as the chair of the deafblind people. And now she is advisor at a project called the Dutch Functional Definition of Deafblindness, and advisory of 2 other projects in the Dutch expertise program, Deelkracht, something like that, yeah? Shared forces. So working with researchers and professionals is a great pleasure. And she says, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to share my experiences with them. So I'll give the word to the 2 of you. Eileen and Sonia, please come.
Ja, en heb je de microfoon? Heb jij de dingen klaar?
Ik heb hier het ding klaar, ja.
Oké. I can start.
Ja, je mag beginnen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on the Dutch functional definition, and we will tell you later more about it. My name is Charlotte van der Molengraft from the Netherlands. I'm expert by experience. I have Usher type 2, and I am a middle-aged woman, silver gray hair, green eyes, and I'm wearing a green dress. Together with my colleague, Eline Heppe, we will tell you more about our project.
Yeah, so my name is Eline Heppe. I'm here together with Charlotte. I am a white female. I have dark blonde hair over my shoulders, and I wear a beige suit. And I'm a senior researcher at Royal Cantalis. And now Charlotte will continue.
The title of our presentation is Consensus on how to define the functional definition in the Netherlands, a Delphi study. Okay, why do we need a functional definition? In the Netherlands, we only have had a medical definition, and I, as expert by experience, always have thought it is not complete, it is not correct. It doesn't fully describe the people with their blindness. A functional definition will more inclusive. Will more inclusive. In the Netherlands, the medical definition is always used to have access to the care, guidance and education.
Ik denk dat je er al bent. Zullen we naar de volgende slide gaan? Zal ik naar de volgende slide gaan? Wat is waarom een functionele definitie? Wat is het verschil?
Oh ja. Ja, doe maar. Is dat? What is a functional definition? Functional definition describes the effect, describes a disability on terms of its impacts on daily life. For example, deafblindness leads to communication problem in daily life. A medical definition describes the defects of a medical definition. For example, hearing loss must be more than 35 degrees. 35%. Next. Krijgen we dat? De story? We like to share the story of Mr. King with you. Eline will tell you what it is.
Yeah, so on this slide you see a picture of a man staring into the distance. It's a lake, and on the lake there's a boat. And this man is Mr. King. Mr. King is 57 years old, and he's deaf in his left ear, only in his left ear, so not in his right ear. With his right ear he can still hear completely. He's completely blind due to an accident that happened 5 years ago. And he receives treatment or rehabilitation for his visual impairment. But he really would like to receive deaf-blind specific care because he also is deaf in his left ear. However, he's not entitled to deaf-blind specific care because his hearing is too good.
So Mr. King's story shows us that the medical definition will lead to the exclusion of people with deafblindness. And that is what we don't want it in the Netherlands. Next. Eline and I, we like to tell you more about our project. And I can assure you it was quite a process. And we, given the short time we have, we mainly will focus on the Delphi study. And Eline is happy to take you through this. So, Eline, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, yes, it was a process. So I think the total process took us around 2 years. And we first started with a literature study because we really wanted to know what do we know about defining deafblindness in the literature. And followed by that, we did a Delphi study. In this Delphi study, I will tell more about what a Delphi study is in the next couple of slides. We wanted to know on which topics related to defining deafblindness do we have consensus in the Netherlands. And followed by that, we held consensus meetings. And in these meetings, we wrote down the functional definition and shaped it until what we have now. So what is a Delphi study? So in a Delphi study, we used questionnaires to anonymously aggregate the opinions of experts on a specific topic, in our case, defining deafblindness. This is done in a series of rounds, and in each round, the experts' opinions are collected and assessed for consensus. So to make this more concrete, we made a questionnaire. We recruited a group of experts. Those were really the experts in the field. So from every organization, who is the main expert on deafblindness? That person participated and received the questionnaire and filled it in and then sent it back to us. And we analyzed the questions and found out, for example, there's one question like almost everyone answered A. We all collected those answers and sent it back to all the participants. And then they could read the answers of all the other people and could think about their own answer. Is that still the answer I want to give to this question? Or by reading the answers of the other experts, I might want to change it a little bit. So that's what we did, and we used 3 rounds. So every time we sent out the questionnaires, and that we did that for 3 times. So we had 45 participants. So we had 26 care professionals from the 5 Dutch organizations that provide deafblind care. And we had 19 experts by experience. They were from the 3 different populations. So there were people with congenital deafblindness, acquired, and age-related deafblindness. And we really looked into having a diverse group. So we had people with ushers, but with different type of ushers. So it was a very diverse group of experts by experience. So we had one questionnaire, and it was with 30 statements. So we had a questionnaire, and it has a statement. I will give you some examples later. And you could choose A, B, C, or D. But when you choose an answer, you have to give a motivation for it. So I chose A because, so with every statement, an expert has to give a motivation. You could not skip any questions without providing a motivation, because that's what we wanted to know. We made 2 versions because we were working with experts, but we were also working with people with lived experience. So we want to make sure that the questionnaires were accessible for everyone. So we made 2 versions, and we sent out those 2 versions to every participant. And the participant can choose if they want to do the easy read one or the other one. And both questionnaires had the same questions. And based on the literature, we decided that we have a consensus on a statement when 80% of the participants chose the same answer. So with 80%, we said, well, there's consensus on this statement. And all the questionnaires were piloted before we sent them out. So there were people with deafblindness who tested the questionnaires before we sent them out. So what are the results? So after 3 rounds, we had reached consensus on 25 of the 30 statements, which is really high. We didn't expect that, because you might think, well, we all have experts on deafblindness, but as you probably all know, if you talk with other experts, some experts have different opinions. So we really thought it would be more difficult, but we had actually high rates of agreement on 25 of the 30 statements. And the other surprise was the response rate. So we had a response rate of 98. So there were only a few participants that dropped out. Well, as a Delphi study is very known for a high dropout rate. So people quit because it's a lot of work, because you have to provide a motivation for every statement. So we had agreement on almost all topics included in our study, but we didn't have agreement on some topics. For example, we didn't have agreement on which terminology we should use in the definition. We also didn't have agreement on what subpopulations we should define, so how many and which are there. We didn't have agreement on should we add an age in the definition. So for example, should we say that people with acquired deafblindness they were all hearing and visually impaired before the age of 3 or something. So we didn't have agreement upon that. We didn't have agreement on if touch, smell, and taste were the main sources for people with deafblindness. And we also didn't have agreement upon if all people with congenital deafblindness had developmental delays. So we had some work to do. We weren't done after the Delphi study. So an example of a result on which we had agreement. So the statement was, we should use the medical and a functional definition to define the population. Well, almost everybody agreed upon that. We should use the medical and a functional definition. So not only the medical and not only the functional, both. Another example is we should develop a general function definition and also functional definitions of subpopulations. So everybody agreed upon we should have a general definition that describes in general people with deafblindness, and then we have functional definitions for subpopulations. So one of the results that we didn't reach agreement upon in the Delphi study was the statement we should use the following terminology in the definition to describe the population, which the first answer was deafblindness. Well, 14% of the people chose that answer. And B, hearing and vision impairment, 45% of the people chose that answer. And then we had a another option, which was use both deafblindness and hearing and vision impairment, and 41% of the participants chose that answer. So we didn't have an agreement because we said, well, 80% has to choose one of these three. So we had some work to do. That's what we did in our consensus meetings. So we held consensus meetings, and in these meetings, the participants, half of the participants in the Delphi study and a new group of experts were included. So we had some fresh blood again. It's good for the discussions. So in that first meeting, we reached agreement on the 5 statements that we didn't have agreement upon, which we needed for writing down the functional definition. And then in the second meeting, we wrote a draft version of the functional definition. So we did that together. And every time we made adjustments to the definition, we had to reach agreement with the total group of people that were included in the consensus meetings. Well, after that, we finalized the definition. We did that with an extra small group of people, again, care professionals, again, experts by experience. And after that, it was checked again by all the researchers to make sure that it was matching the results of the Delphi study and matching the results of the literature study and matching the results of the consensus meetings. So yeah, it took some time, but we have it. And we have it in agreement with all the care organizations in the Netherlands that provide care to deafblind people. So we're really happy with that. You can find the functional definition on the flyers that we sent you. You can use the QR code. We translated our Dutch definition to English, so you can really find it there. On the first paper, you can see you can read the definition. You find the general definition and then the definition of the subpopulations. And then below that, we also wrote an explanation. And this explanation provides more information about the target population, so about people with deafblindness, but also all the other terminology that we use in the definition that is needed to understand this definition. And our next step is to implement this so that people that are working at the care organizations, at the desk office for entering the care, entering education, can use this definition in practice. We also are working on implementing in many policy documents that are used to provide, for example, that are used by insurance companies, for example, to pay for the care that people receive. So there's still a lot of work to do, but we're really happy with the results. And we also translated this definition to international sign language for those who are more familiar with that as well. So yeah. I also had it on the slides, but I'm not sure if we have time for it, so I will look at the moderator, and I think maybe we can do questions, and if there's still time, I can always read the first part of it. Yeah, should I read the first part? Okay, so this is the general functional definition. A hearing and it's, how do you say that in English? When it's italics. Okay, the and is italics, which is very important, what we learned from the translators. So a hearing and vision impairment, between brackets deafblindness, is a combined auditory and italics visual impairment. The degree of the hearing and vision impairments can vary and change over time. Someone with a hearing and vision impairment experiences problems with communication and/or information acquisition and processing, and/or orientation and mobility, and/or social functioning, and/or energy homeostasis. As a result, a hearing and vision impairment hinders the performance of daily activities and participation in society. The extent of the problem someone experiences depends on an interaction between the personal characteristics, environmental factors, characteristics of the combined auditory and visual functions, and additional problems. People with a hearing and vision impairment need specific care and support. And below that we have the functional definition of the subpopulations. I have those also on my screen, but I think it will be a lot. You can find them, and yeah, every word in this definition we talked about. Every single word has been talked about. So if you have any questions of why we used a certain word in a certain place, I can all explain it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eileen and Charlotte. It's very interesting. I'm from Denmark, from the Nordic countries, and we have also a Nordic definition on deafblindness that is very similar, actually, to the Dutch one. So I think we can join forces throughout the world on the functional definition for deafblindness. Yes. So any questions or comments just before we close? Yeah, we have.
My name is Daniel. I'm from Norway, and I know the Nordic definition, and I thought the same. It's quite similar, and it's very good to know that you have the same perspective on deafblindness than we have. I was a bit curious about you talk about care, and care is a big word. What was the professions of the people who were involved? Who were the professionals who discussed this? Were people from healthcare and social care, were pedagogical people? What kind of professions did they have?
Yes, thank you. It's a very good question. I will later also talk you about the question, but there was a very diverse group. So we had medical doctors in there, we had psychologists in there, we had professionals that work in the groups. We had everything, so we really thought out to have a diverse group. They all had, so we had inclusion criteria for them to be part of our study, because there were many professionals that wanted to be part of our study, but we had inclusion criteria. So they had to have extensive work with people with deafblindness for many years at multiple organizations. So yeah, it was a very diverse group. We had people from care, but we also had people from education. We had people that provide sort of a very, so they provide care at their homes. They were also included, so that is a sort of a low profile type of care that we have in the Netherlands. So yeah, it was a very diverse group, and it was for us then very surprising to see that how much agreement they had, because we of course know the Nordic definition, but when we started with that we were like, well, maybe we can just translate this one to Dutch and then we're done, you know, it doesn't take 2 years, everybody's happy. But then we had a meeting and we discussed it, and everybody was like, no, I don't like this and I don't like that. So we're like, okay, we're gonna start from scratch and everybody has to come along, and we're doing it. So yeah, it was a process, but I think it was really good to do it with all of us. And in the end, I think the Nordic definition was, they had an animation made recently. So I saw this animation and there were so many overlapping themes and other parts of the definition with our definition. But I think it was a very good process for us to do it from the start, from scratch, to make everybody agree upon what we write down. Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be meaningful for the people who live with it. So thank you very much for this very wonderful presentation, both of you. I have a small present. I don't know, I guess this one will give. So Charlotte, I have this for you.
Thank you.
And this is for you. Thank you. So thank you very much.
Yes.